Civil War is credited as being the end to slavery, but in reality, the fight to end slavery started many years before the Civil War began. During the 1820s, the spread of manufacturing and commerce happened in the northern United States. With this spread of technology and machinery, new ideas came into place into the people. Something that began to be stressed was religion and ending sinful practices and upholding God's will in society. It was agreed upon by many preachers that slavery was not God's way. This is what people call the beginning of the Abolitionist movement. Beginning in the 1830s, the Abolitionist movement's goals were to emancipate all slaves and end racial discrimination. Some people in this movement believed that emancipation should be immediate, freeing of the slaves, while others thought that slavery should remain in certain states but not be expanded to new states. In order to accomplish these goals, abolitionists took to spreading the word and educating people. The Liberator, an abolitionist newspaper, played a major role in this movement. It was largely supported by free African Americans. The Anti-Slavery Society was also founded. The society was created to denounce slavery as a sin and endorse nonviolence to all. They flooded the North with anti-slavery literature and demanding an end to slavery. As the fight for freedom continued, the question of women's rights came up. Some people agreed in equality for all, but others didn't agree that women's rights needed to be fought for. This disagreement ended up splitting the American Anti-Slavery Society. The idea of abolitionism ended up dividing the country so much that the Civil War took place. The northern states, under the direction of Abraham Lincoln, who had issued a proclamation emancipating slaves, fought against the southern states who were seeking to secede from the country because of this and other issues. Many freed slaves even fought with the Union to help free their brothers and sisters. Eventually, the war and practices of slavery ended in 1865. Since 1865, slavery has been illegal, and many movements have been a result of abolitionism.
Many people contributed to the abolitionist movement. Among one of the most well-known abolitionists was an escaped female slave named Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was known as the conductor on the Underground Railroad during the 1850s. But wait, let's back up and learn more about Harriet's history and how she became one of the most influential people of the abolitionist movement. Harriet Tubman was born a slave in 1820 in Dorchester County, Maryland. Her actual given name was Araminta Minty Ross, but she changed it when she escaped in 1849 when her owner died. Shortly after her escape, there was a notice published in the Cambridge Democrat offering a $300 reward for her return, but Harriet had no plans to remain in bondage. She had bigger ideas. Eventually, Harriet made her way to Philadelphia, a trip of nearly 100 miles by the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a network of people, primarily African Americans, who offered shelter and aid to escaped slaves. It is said to have started in the late 18th century up to the Civil War. The railroad was organized by conductors, leaders who guided the fugitive slaves to hiding places such as private homes, churches, and schoolhouses. These safe places were called stations or safe houses and were operated by what were called station masters. Most operators were just ordinary people, farmers, business owners, or ministers. Harriet first served as an operator to guide her parents and siblings to safety. Eventually, she would free hundreds of others to freedom and earn the respective name of Moses for her fearless leadership.
Let my people go, go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell Pharaoh, let my people go.
Alongside her efforts of being a conductor of the Underground Railroad, Harriet greatly contributed to the abolitionist movement as she worked for the Union Army as a cook and nurse. She also became an Army scout and spy, being the first woman to lead an armed expedition in the war. She guided the Combahee River Raid, which liberated more than 700 slaves in South Carolina. Harriet's contributions are innumerable. Along with saving hundreds of slaves, she never lost one or let one return to slavery. In 2016, it was announced that Harriet would be the new face of the $20 bill.
This isn't the only impact Tubman had on society today. The abolitionist movement changed the United States and everyone around the world. It sparked a discussion about the rights of women in the United States that eventually led to women's suffrage. Through Tubman's work and the success of the abolitionist movement, the way was paved for the civil rights movement of the 1960s and the Black Lives Matter movement of today. Although slavery was outlawed in the United States at the close of the Civil War, Slavery is still an issue today. Those fighting to emancipate human trafficking victims call themselves the Underground Railroad, inspired by Tubman's fearless leading of slaves in her day to the Promised Land. Since Tubman's remarkable contributions, the world has made many large strides towards equality. But the fight for true equality is far from over.
My people